This time, Steaua Bucharest and the Romanian Revolution.
And it's no, nay, never. No, nay, never, no more. 'Cause I'll stay a wild rover forever and more. And it's no, nay, never. No, nay, never, no more. 'Cause I'll stay a wild rover forever and more.
Hello and welcome to By Far the Greatest Team, a podcast in which football fans attempt the seemingly impossible to rank once and for all which teams are the greatest teams of all time. My name's Graham Dunn. I'll be championing and putting the cause of Oxford United to the fore in every episode. And joining me as ever, lifting his head up from his many Excel spreadsheets, it's Jamie Rooney.
Good evening. It is the evening. Okay.
Amazingly, we were both in Oxford last week watching football, which seems quite odd. You didn't choose to go to the correct ground, but what are the chances of that?
Yeah, I was across the city with your nearest rivals, I guess. Oxford United. I don't know if they see Oxford City as their nearest rivals, or the vice versa.
I think there's a sort of Liverpool and Tranmere-ness about that relationship. A lot of former Oxford figures end up there. Alfie Potter, who's famous for scoring our crucial, cup final goals. He's probably more famous for, but he got our crucial third goal in our famous playoff victory at League. So he's at Oxford City, among others. And gloriously, I mean, this is their highest position, I think, ever. They made it into the conference. It's not been an overly glorious season for them because they've been relegated. But were you impressed with what you saw?
Do you know what? I enjoyed it. Yeah. Alfie Potter was playing in that game,
Hey!
and you're right. They have finished their highest position ever, which is bottom of the National League, which is a big achievement. I was one of 431 fans on the night. I was reliably informed by the friends I attended with the game that was low, and there was some speculation that maybe some of the fans may have gone across the city to watch the other team in Oxford that night, who were playing a very important football match.
Yes, not very successfully as it turned out.
I did enjoy it. I tell you what I liked about it. A couple of things: the proximity to the pitch and hearing all the communication from the players. That's great, just to be a part of that. Because when you go to Premier League games or Champions League game, you lose that a little bit because the noise is just so verbal. You can't really focus on what's being spoken on the pitch. So having that was good. But what I thought was interesting was the clash of styles. You've got this Oxford City team that were trying to play the ball out from the back. Very much the keeper was using his feet and the ball was moved to the fullbacks into the centre back. And that was the playing style that you had, this kind of Guardiola approach to the influence from the Premier League as filtered down to the National League. And then you got Bromley, who were playing this really high pressing game against this passing game. So you got the Klopp element of the Gegenpress against Oxford City. And it worked well because within 4 minutes, Bromley were 2-0 up.
You go, you see, that tells you everything about those who try and play the beautiful game.
Do you know what? It's true as well. It's like, I can't help but think that John Beck and his style of football, and in a softer sense, Sam Allardyce, two of the teams we talked about recently, maybe there's something in the long ball game. Maybe there's an opportunity to bring it back. It could be more strategic in terms of how you deploy the long ball game. Maybe not just grow the grass in the corners longer, which would be difficult on the Oxford City pitch because it's 4G. So growing the grass in the corners there would be quite a challenge. But I think there's an argument to maybe for a coach out there to bring back and modernise the long ball game.
John Beck, of course, had a go at doing it at Histon, where he was assistant manager a few years ago, and they did very well. They almost made it out of the conference before. I think there's a bit of a shelf life with. There was definitely a shelf life with the John Beck side. So I think generally with long ball managers. And so one of the things we talked about on a podcast, one of the things we almost talked about on a podcast a couple of weeks ago when we did the last one we did before we went off on our little mini Easter break was when we were doing the England 1982 World Cup squad, and we had quite a nice segment about Panini stickers and Panini World Cup stickers, which in fact didn't make the edit. We had too much gold on that one that it didn't make the edit, which is a shame because it occurred to me that this was a perfect link to a story we were talking about, the great Panini World Cup stickers. And Jamie, well, you can probably retell the story. You noticed that in the 1982 England World Cup sticker album that there was a couple of players who made the album but not the squad.
Indeed, Alvin Martin was in the album but didn't make the squad. And as we talked about with Deck, that on the bit that got cut, and then we'll probably get cut from this one as well. I couldn't help but go back and look at my old Panini sticker albums that I've had from the 1980s, the Football League ones, which were brilliant because they did the first division, the second division, first tier, second tier, and a little bit of the third tier as well. And then they did the Scottish Premier and then the Scottish First. Yes, it was a really comprehensive collection. And I had completely missed that in the 19th edition, Everton had a youngster called Steve McMahon in their ranks. And it completely missed me out completely that he'd actually played for Everton.
Absolutely. Everton and Aston Villa before he played for Liverpool. The interesting thing about now we were talking about Panini stickers and World Cups, and interestingly that has emerged in the news today of all days with the story that, but for slightly different reasons. So there's a story which has been in the papers because of the sticker album was produced by Panini many years ago. It's now gone over to Topps, and there's a whole kind of naming rights issue with it, which means certain stars can't be non-Panini. I don't know. They obviously have Panini have owning rights for something over them, which seems a bit odd. So it seems that Man City players in particular, so people like John Stones and Phil Foden and Saka as well of Arsenal, people who will be in that squad can't be in the sticker albums. And it's not even fair to call Alvin Martin a make weight from that 1982 World Cup squad because he was definitely in the frame for being in it. But so players like Callum Wilson, Rico Lewis, but most entertainingly, in that sticker album, I'm glad I read a report in The Guardian that didn't even say who he was, and I don't think I even know who he is. And fortunately, the coverage in the Express, they do explain who Luke Thomas is. So Luke Thomas, who is a Leicester fullback, currently on loan at Middlesbrough, and according to the reports of what the England squad 2024 is in it, Luke Thomas makes it. So just absolutely extraordinary.
So this is, just to clarify, is this for the up and coming Euros? Is Panini running a Euro
2024? So Foden and Saka all being left out of the score of the sticker album because they don't have the rights. But yeah, there's a sticker of Leicester defender Luke Thomas, who's currently on loan at Middlesbrough.
Well, I mean, I can only imagine that Luke Thomas and a bunch of young kids who are about to embark on their first ever Panini sticker album are going to be robbed of that wonderful feeling when you peel back a pack of stickers that probably cost about £3 now these days, and then you open it up and you look through that pack and you're going to be looking for Luke Thomas and a couple of shinies.
Absolutely. Who wouldn't want that? Maybe they make him really rare, so he's a bit
like
more
Pokemon cards.
I always wondered with Panini, the Panini sticker albums in the 70s, whether Alan Kennedy, who I definitely remember being very, very, he was the impossible to get one in 1978, and I don't know whether that was the case. Whether if you're in Newcastle, there are thousands of Alan Kennedys. I don't know whether it's or whether they did actually restrict the number of Alan Kennedys who were made.
Oh, what a shame.
Definitely.
Panini. Yeah. That's a sticking point.
So we aren't here to talk about stickers today. We are going to be talking. It's a two-hander today, just myself and Jamie, and we are going to be talking about Steaua Bucharest. If that's not filling you with great excitement, I'm not surprised. I mean, I wasn't terribly excited at the idea of Steaua Bucharest, who I would describe as potentially the dullest, most successful you're a team in Europe that there's been. I probably want it both ways. So I kind of complain when you don't get it's the same old mega rich teams that get to the finals, the European competitions. But you get a couple of finals where Steaua Bucharest get to the final. Where you think, oh, really? And so I went into this not with any great excitement. It is an absolute. There's some incredible stuff around this team and around, not least about who Steaua Bucharest are, even because there's just an unbelievable argument and row going on about who owns Steaua Bucharest. Full stop, and their previous achievements. So maybe we should begin on who are Steaua Bucharest, because they're essentially a kind of a state-run team, aren't they? That come out of the army.
Yeah, it's not unusual, and I don't mean to sound like Tom Jones when I say that, but it's not unusual for teams from Eastern European football leagues to be run by the army and the police. And in the case of Dynamo Bucharest, who we'll talk about, the secret police. So this is behind what was the Iron Curtain. Steaua Bucharest as a football team go all the way back to 1947 when they were formed. They are on army side. They are run essentially by the state.
This comes a little bit back to some of the things that maybe that Pavel was talking about clubs. If you have a profession attached, and he was talking about the Polish clubs under communism, and I think it was the mining corporation that had could attract the best players because they could pay the best wages from them. And I think there's something around here where because people can then have a career in the army afterwards, or at the very least get the rank attached to it. It makes it easier to bring in good talent.
When you're the top teams and you're run by the state, there are methods and there are ways of where you can bring in players, and you don't need to justify any transfer fees. But yeah, it was pretty normal for teams to just employ individuals in jobs, as Pavel wonderfully articulated and the Gone Examples story, and then use them in your football team and then go on and dominate. And Steaua do dominate. In the first 15 years or so in the Romanian league, they win 6 championships and 6 cups.
Yeah. In fact, there's a tournament around about 1954 where the Romanian team is entirely made up of Steaua Bucharest players. Absolutely incredible. Which sort of again shows the dominance of Steaua at that point. They continue in this sort of duopoly, but maybe Dynamo Bucharest have perhaps the upper hand then for a bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit yo-yo-y. There are other teams that do compete and win championships in Romania, but generally it doesn't go many seasons without either Steaua or Dynamo winning the championship or winning the cup competition. But there is a period in the late 70s, early 80s, where Steaua Bucharest do go through a bit of a barren spell for almost a 20-year period leading up to this point of when they start to emerge as European possibilities in terms of winning tournaments. They only win a couple of championships, they only win a couple of cups, and their neighbours Dynamo are winning more championships and more cups. And Dynamo being the secret police, there's rumours that they're tapping the Steaua Bucharest offices. There are mics in there relaying their transfer activity or what they're planning. So, funny enough, a lot of players that were touted to go to Steaua suddenly end up signing for Dynamo last minute. So you got this whole kind of strange secret police stuff going on whilst teams trying to win football matches.
All very Richard Nixon of that era, I guess, as well. Very, very Watergate. And what sort of changes for Steaua?
Well, they bring in a coach called Emmerich Yene. In his second season, after this barren spell, he actually wins the Romanian double, the league, and the cup. And then that propels Steaua Bucharest to go into the European Cup at that particular moment. So a change of coach has brought a change of attitudes and differences in order to potentially leverage the possibilities of this team becoming the number one team in Romania again.
But actually, it's the European football that really brings them to the attention of the wider public. And, I mean, the Steaua have no great record in Europe before 1986, do they?
Not really. They got to the quarterfinals of the Cup Winners' Cup in 71-72. There's something quite significant that happens in the 85-86 season where Steaua Bucharest go into the European Cup to compete. Firstly, the quality opposition, you could argue, is not massively high, but there is Juventus are there. They were a pretty decent team in the 1980s. They were the holders. Barcelona in there, Anderlecht, a brilliant Anderlecht team of the 1980s with Edo Sifo were in there, a really, really tidy Belgian team. And Bayern Munich, of course, who just seem to always be there in the European Cup. But significantly, in the 1985, in the previous final, as we know, sadly, you had the Heysel disaster, and that led to English teams being banned from European competition. This was the first year of that 5-year ban. Previously to 1985-86, 7 of the last 9 winners in the European Cup came from England. Liverpool, Notts Forest and Aston Villa were sharing the European Cup. Only a couple of teams from the north, Hamburg being one, who we've covered, the great Kevin Keegan team, had interrupted this dominant spell of English teams. So Steaua Bucharest could probably count their chickens a little bit that they're not being matched up against Howard Kendall's Everton team. Because I think there's an argument, and I think we had this argument with Declan when we talked Howard Kendall's 1980s team, that Everton probably were the best of that English bunch over that period, but they were denied European football because of the disaster that happened at Heysel. I think they would have gone deep into this competition and maybe been able to break down this defensive-minded Steaua Bucharest team.
Yes, so this is the tournament that theoretically Everton were set up to win. I remember that. Unsurprisingly, Dec agreed with you. I'm not. That's not too much of a surprise on that. But Everton were very well placed for that. So they get to the final of the European Cup, where they played Barcelona, where they played Terry Venable's Barcelona. And what's interesting is when you look at the respective runs to the final. Barcelona have what you would consider a sort of quite traditional running, don't they? They play some proper teams in there, don't they?
Teams that we're more familiar with, they definitely face up to period. I just kind of give it a little bit of context before we get through the run. It wasn't unusual for teams from Eastern Europe to go deep into these tournaments. You would regularly get 2, 3, 4 teams from Eastern European countries that would make the quarterfinals of the European Cup. And generally they would face a Western European team and they would invariably go out. But they generally would go deep into the tournament and just kind of give you a flavour of that. 80-81, 4 Eastern European teams made the quarterfinals. Same in 81-82. So then 83-84, Dynamo Bucharest, Steaua's great rival, go all the way to the quarterfinals where they narrowly lose out to Liverpool, who go on and win the tournament. So it's not unusual for Eastern European teams to be going deep into the tournament. The Steaua Bucharest getting to the final is obviously their first final. It's a bit of a surprise. But yeah, they've had a fairly, on paper, as we call it, easy run, whereby Barcelona...
Barcelona, they play Porto. I think in the semi-final, they're up against Gothenburg. Okay. What I would say is...
Juventus in the quarterfinal.
What I would say is if my team ever reached the quarterfinal of the Champions League, I would probably hope that they played Koisia of Finland.
Yeah.
How would you
Finnish
pronounce
teams
it?
don't generally get to the... I don't know. I'm just there for Koisia, but I don't know. I really don't know. I don't think they exist as a football team as well. I think they're another one that's rebranded under a different name.
Yeah,
the team
currently playing
here
in the 4th tier of Finnish football. So they didn't go on to become a powerhouse of Finnish football. So yes, this Steaua side, as you say, it's a relatively generous run through to the final, would you say?
I don't know, because I look at the results, and football was very different back then. And as we mentioned, Anderlecht were actually a really decent team in the 1980s. They would regularly get to the last stages of the European Cup, as it was called. And they've also, Steaua Bucharest in the second round, they faced up against Honvéd as well, Honvéd from Budapest, who have a rich history as being one of the more recognised, famous Eastern European football teams. But there's a theme with Steaua Bucharest as they go through. They're definitely not a team that travel very well. And then maybe that's got something to do with the communist regime that they were under, and traveling was something that was treated with deep suspicion because you never knew if the players were going to come back. So maybe there was some kind of stress attached to away games in European football, but they don't do well away at all. They go to Denmark and they draw. They go to Honvéd in Hungary and they lose. In the quarterfinal, when they play the Finnish team, they draw. When they go to Belgium and play Anderlecht, they lose. So they don't actually win any game away from home in this run. They're dependent on winning games at home in order to move to the next round of this particular tournament on the aggregate scoreline.
And so they do get to the final, and we'll talk about this final, which is an extraordinary game in a moment. I think it's probably also, because we haven't talked much about the team and the players there. To me, at least, this team is a bit under the radar. I'm very familiar, and we'll talk a little bit about some of the Romanian players that come out of Steaua over the decade that follows this. But at this stage, it's still not, there aren't too many household names in there, are there?
Not household names in the world of English football, because there's a few in there household names from a Romanian perspective. You've got Marius Lakatos, scored a lot of goals. You've got a prolific striker in Victor Pachuca, who has head-to-head battles with Georgi Hagi in the Romanian league in terms of who finishes out on top goal scorer for a few years. You've got David Allen, who scored some critical goals in the run as well, in this particular run. So there's a few players in there that are known. And then you've also got who becomes a coach at some point, Angel Ordonescu, who went on, as we can discuss in a bit, to manage the national team and do pretty well there.
The one I find most extraordinary, now I'm sure I should know him. I mean, he's such a legend, and he really is. He's absolutely, throughout this era and this story, Lakatos is absolutely central to it. He's an absolute hero for Steaua. Wore the number 7 shirt that was retired in his honour in 2021. He has 2 spells of them, both before and after some spells in Spain and Italy. Hugely successful, won a huge amount of silverware in that period, and also plays in 2 World Cups with Romania throughout this period. So quite a legend. He comes to play quite a significant role in the cup final, which they play against Barcelona, Terry Venable's Barcelona.
I think it's worth pointing out that at this particular point, because of the way and the nature of the way the communist leagues were structured, it was very normal for players to play in their national league because they couldn't travel. There was no way to travel. So you have got the quality in the leagues, and we know that the Eastern Europeans have produced some wonderful footballers over time. So you've got the quality in the country. So the quality is compressed because players aren't going elsewhere. There was one particular point where later down the line, when you were still under the Ceausescu rule, where he was still in office and running this communist country, where Georgi Hagi could have gone to Juventus and in exchange for a Fiat plant in Bucharest, but that was vetoed because they weren't going to allow these people to leave the country. So you have this quality that's in the league because players can only play in that league; they can't go elsewhere.
And Steaua do fantastically well to even reach the final. In the final, they against Barcelona, a super solid defensive display. No one for the neutral necessarily. It finishes 0-0, goes to extra time, 0-0 there. We get to penalties, and it very nearly finishes 0-0 there as well.
Yeah, it's remarkable. I think just before this ridiculous country shootout, which is the worst in European football history, by the way, there is some tactical changes going on in the game that are worth pointing out. The soon-to-be coach, Ordonescu, who hasn't played a single minute all season, but he's on the bench in this particular final. He comes on with around 20 minutes to go, and he kind of steadies the ship. He's come on as this experienced professional where Barcelona are getting desperate, and they do have chances. Steve Archibald has some quality chances in the second half. Steve Archibald, wearing football kits the way the football kits should be worn. This long shirt where he's got these short shorts on, Glenn Hoddle-esque, and you can't see his shorts, So Hoddle and Archibald at Tottenham were just absolutely fashionistas in terms of their sartorial style. Absolutely fantastic the way they wore their football shirts. But Archibald's had a couple of chances, and Archibald shouldn't have been playing. So there was a lot of clamour in the Spanish press that they wanted Pichi Alonso to start the game. Archibald missed the semi-final, and he was injured. So Pichi had come in. The Spanish fans at Barcelona wanted Alonso to start in place of Archibald. But Venables, being the English coach who brought Archibald in, started with Archibald. And Archibald has a couple of really good chances. One where he kind of flashes out a foot. If it's on target, it's in, but it goes narrowly wide. He also has a header, which I think he probably should have done better with. A free header from around about 5-6 meters out. He should be hitting the target from there and get his place over the bar. So Leslie comes on in the final with 20 minutes to go, and he kind of steadies it down, and he kind of leads his team into the penalty shootout. And it's also worth mentioning a couple of things. It's like Bert Schuster. I think he's a favourite of yours, Graham. I'm pretty sure he's a favourite of yours.
Very much so.
Yeah, he gets substituted in the final, and he reacts in the way that you would only expect Bert Schuster to react in a European Cup final when he's been substituted. He's not a happy chappy.
Does he take it with good grace?
He gets subbed with a few minutes to go in normal time, and I think he leaves the stadium and doesn't come back. He's not going to stick around to cheer his team on to win a European Cup. Barcelona's first European Cup it would have been, because there's a lot of pressure. And also, it's worth pointing out, the final played in Seville, and Steaua Bucharest have less than 1,000 fans, because fans aren't allowed to travel because there's strict controls under the communism rule of who can go. So you've got about 800 fans that have gone to the game, and they've all been vetted by the secret police with the idea that none of these guys are going to defect. We're safe on this. These 800 will return back to Romania. That doesn't happen. About 50 of them do defect and never return back to Romania.
I hadn't put two and two together about it being in Seville, but I mean, it's virtually a home game, especially once you add in the lack of travel of the Romanian supporters. So normally, under those circumstances, when you get a penalty shootout, it does usually favour the home side. It's not quite straightforward. Spain hasn't had for many years, didn't have a very good record with that. And Barcelona certainly take it to a new level of penalty ineptitude.
They do. I think, from memory, I think this is the second European Cup final that's ever finished on penalties. The first one was, I think, a couple of years before, where Liverpool beat Roma, famously Bruce Grobbelaar with the legs playing the gamesmanship. And so Steaua take the first kick, and Majari steps up. And
their first kick is dreadful.
I mean, that's just being generous, Graham. Super generous. Yeah. Irati, the Barcelona goalkeeper, makes a pretty comfortable save. You saved the first penalty. You've got the advantage, and you can see the Barcelona goalkeeper, Irati, is like, this is it. We've won now. We've definitely won. He has no idea what's going to follow.
Spoken like a Man United fan shortly after the Coventry City Cup semi. No, absolutely. Enter Helmuth Duckadam, a relatively unheralded goalkeeper for Steaua Bucharest. Looks fantastic. Looks so 80s at that point. Nice little moustache and perm, and a sort of a great 80s goalkeeper shirt in this one as well. He saves the first Barcelona penalty, and it is a decent save, actually. He has to work for that one, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. Alasanko, the Barcelona player, kind of aims for the keeper's right. It's low, it's hard, it's close to the post. And Duckadam is guessed rightly. He's getting into the psychology of the piece, and he's guessed rightly, and he's made a really decent save. A lot more to be proud about than Arati's save on the first one from Jaru.
Steaua maybe would feel they've been given a little life there. They've got a chance to put their foot down, taking the first penalty again. They step up for the second penalty, and they
Yep.
That one's saved as well.
Yeah, and it's important to say that that's gone out. So Bologna steps up and it's saved again. So you've had 3 penalties. They've all missed. They've all been on target and they've all been saved by the goalkeeper. So at this particular point in the match, we've got a success rate in terms of hitting the target, but a 0% percentage rate of conversion as the goalkeepers have done what they're not always expected to do in penalty shootouts and saved them all.
So surely now Barca will step up and put things right. Barca do take the next one. They again aim right. Duckadam goes right again. It's an even better save. This is a one-handed scoop. It's absolutely brilliant.
It is brilliant. It's close to being a carbon copy of the first. So I only imagine the psychological game that's now going on between the Steaua Bucharest goalkeeper and the Barcelona players, because whereas the 2 Steaua penalties were hit in different spots and they've both been saved, you've got the Barcelona kicks that have been hit in the same spot and the keeper has incredibly got across, got down low and been able to make great saves. 4 penalties down, all saved, 0-0, penalty number 5.
Who steps up but our man Lakatos?
He does. And I'll tell you what, he looked to me a player that's absolutely feeling the nerves of the occasion. Having seen the first 4 missed, because he absolutely levers it almost down the middle. And he is lucky that it hits the underside of the bar. And it's one of those classic ones that hits the underside of the bar, and instead of going down into the net, it's gone down onto the pitch almost vertically. And then it's bounced back up. And the net is bulged. The top of the net is bulged. So that's confirmation that has actually crossed the line. But it's a close run thing. Steaua Bucharest 1-0 up after penalty number 5.
Up steps Barcelona for their 3rd penalty. We've had 2 go right, and Duckadam has gone right. What happens this time? Do they go right again?
Well, you've got right on, baby. So you got Pichi Alonso, the guy who the Barcelona fans wanted to play instead of Steve Archibald. He's now on the pitch and he's taken a penalty. And you're right. And Duckadam now is like I've read quotes where he said to himself, "Look, I've seen him come in, the Barcelona player come in, and he can't be thinking that I'm going to go right again. He must be thinking I'm going to go left. So I've decided I'm going to go right." PG Alonso goes right, and Duckadam makes another brilliant save. He's gone to the right correctly 3 times, and he's saved 3 penalties. I mean, the Barcelona penalties almost carbon copies each other, and the whole psychology of the piece right now must be absolutely brilliant, because now you've got the 1-0 advantage after 6 penalties each way.
Yeah, 3 penalties each.
Thank you.
Only 1 in. I'd argue that Barca's 3 penalties were all better than Steaua's, but they still find themselves 1 down. Steaua score their 4th and the 7th penalty, so we got a 2-0 scoreline. We now get to Barcelona's 4th penalty taker, who's now left with a real debate. I can't go the same way as my other teammates, can I?
Well, it's worth pointing out, Steaua Bucharest, when they go 2-0 up through Ballon, it's probably the best penalty of the whole thing. It's confident penalty. And this one is how penalties probably should be converted in penalty shootout competition. But yeah, you've got Barcelona now 2-0 down. They've missed 3 penalties. They've got 2 left. They can only get to parity in terms of taking this now penalty shootout into sudden death. Up steps another Alonso, Marcus Alonso, familiar name. Chelsea fullback Marcus Alonso. This is his dad. Oh, wow. So Marcus Alonso's dad played football. Marcus Alonso's granddad played football. So you've got this family thing going on. So you've got Marcus Alonso's father now stepping up with this critical penalty. And Duckadam again I've read the quotes where he's like, right, so I've gone 3 times. So he's probably thinking I'm going to go to the right. And he's probably thinking I should go to the right as well. But then I'm thinking, maybe he's going to go to the left. So I've already decided I'm going to go to the left. And where does Marcus Alonso put it?
Unbelievable. 4 penalty saves out of 4. Steaua win. A 2-0 penalty shootout margin is pretty unusual, but 4 penalty saves. Is that the only time the goalkeeper's done that? It's definitely the first time the keeper had done it. I'm not sure it's to have 4 saves since then.
Yeah, 100% save record, absolutely. I mean, you've had penalty shootouts that have gone on for ages where keepers have been able to make 4 saves. That's happened a few times, not many times, because generally some players miss the target. Well, I think it's the first very time that's ever happened. It is statistically the worst penalty shootout I think there's ever been. It's a 25% success rate. It has actually been equalled in 2004 in the Copa Libertadores between Boca Juniors and Once Caldas of Chile. That also finished 2-0 after 8 penalties. But I understand from that some of those penalties missed the target. They weren't all saves. So 2-0 in a penalty shootout in a European Cup final. I mean, it mirrored the quality of the game, I think. But it's absolute brilliant drama.
Absolutely brilliant. And incredible story for Duckadam, who within weeks of that game, he actually gets a blood disorder and is quite ill and is out of football for the next 3 years and doesn't play. So he does come back and play in the lower leagues of Romania for a little bit and then ultimately retires and becomes a major in the Romanian border force.
Yeah, I think there's some doubt. Incredible impact, incredible place in history. I think there's some doubts about whether he had the blood disorder or not. He had previously, I think he'd made some comments about the then leader, Nicola Ceausescu, and he disappears for 3 years. And there are rumours that he's been killed. There are rumours that he's had his arms cut off. And there are rumours that maybe he's had this blood transfusion. But he does, 3 years later, he does turn up. He does play in the lower divisions. He does have both his arms. It just seems another one of these strange behind the iron curtain circumstances where if you speak out against the establishment, there seems to be a reaction to that particular action.
Wow, that is incredible. So yes, that is, I mean, it's an unbelievable contribution to Steaua's football history, and to do that then essentially disappear off the map of football is quite surreal. Now it should be said that 1986, so all this is going on in Europe and we focused on this mostly because of the glorious penalty shootout more than anything, but domestically as well, this is a golden period for Steaua, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. So they're previous champions. They won the cup the previous season. They've defended their championship in the Romanian league. They've also gone on, as we've just established, won a thrilling European Cup final against the mighty FC Barcelona of Catalonia. And then they're in the final of the cup against their rivals, Dynamo Bucharest. And they're all for a treble. But they lose. They lose the final. They lose the Dynamo and they miss out on a historic treble. And they could have joined that elite group. But at the time, I think only had Bayern Munich and Ajax and Celtic in that group. Later to be joined by the brilliant Manchester team, United.
So they have success there. And they then embark from June of that year, just after the Champions League or European Cup final. They go on a 3.5 year unbeaten run. 3.5 years. Is that right?
Yeah, it's 104 games, so we can pick that apart a little bit in terms of what that means. I mean, this is proper invincible stuff. You can keep your Arsene Wenger's Arsenal and stick them up, whatever. But what happens in the first season, in the 86, 87 season, when they're defending European champions, they go on and they compete in the European Super Cup, showcase opener for the season that UEFA has. And they play Dynamo Kiev, who have won the UEFA Cup that season. So you've got 2 Eastern European teams competing for the then European Super Cup. So what Steaua Bucharest do, because they have this weight of being the army team, they reach out to one of the teams in the leagues, a team called Sportul Stănesc. They have a young 19-year-old playing for them called Georgie Hadji. And they say, look, can we just borrow your player for this European Super Cup game against Dynamo Kiev? Because, we've heard great things about him. He's just been the second top goal scorer in the Romanian league. He's an attacking midfielder, and he looks like he can, handle himself quite well. So Steaua Bucharest borrow Georgie Hadji. They play him in the European Super Cup. They win 1-0. Georgie Hadji scores that goal that gives Steaua Bucharest their second European trophy, fast on the heels of their first one that they won in May. And then Steaua Bucharest decide, I think we'll keep this player. And they just keep him. No transfer fee. They just refuse to give him back. And Georgie Hadji becomes a Steaua Bucharest player.
Which is quite something. So now they've got the unbelievable Hadji, who is an absolutely glorious player over the coming decade or so. And they embark on this run where they just don't lose.
Yeah, they defend their title again. And it's also important to find out, actually, they changed the coach. So, Angel Ordonescu, who is the player, who's been the assistant through the 85-86 season and has come on and played in the final in the last 20 minutes of normal time, they lose their coach. So, Emeric Yene goes on and manages the Romanian national team and really sets up a period of time where Romania become quite a strong force in world football. Not only do they go on and qualify for successive World Cups, they reach a number of European Championships as well, which they hadn't done previously. So this really kind of sets up a golden period for the Romanian national team as well in terms of what they achieve. Well, they've got a new coach, and now this new coach has just got the absolute touch of genius about him in domestic football, because you're right, Graham, they go on and they win the league and cup double 3 seasons running. And in that period, they don't lose a single game. And you think not losing a single game, you'd win the league quite comfortably. But they narrowly win the league on a couple of occasions against their fierce rivals Dynamo by the odd point or two. So you've got these two teams that are absolutely smashing everyone that they come up against. They're generally drawing against each other, but they're winning every other game. So it really comes down to the fine margins.
They, I think they go during this period. They, amongst the other achievements, they go on a 17-game winning run. I think in 1987 it is, which is then equalled by Dynamo Bucharest the following year, which does sort of speak to that level of sort of two very, very strong sides in that league.
I think there's one thing that we haven't talked about that it would be remiss of us not to mention in weighing up the greatness of this football team, which at some point we get to, because that's the whole point of what we do here. So, Valentin Ceausescu is the son of Nicolae Ceausescu, and Valentin is running Steaua Bucharest. So, you've got the president's son who has an influence in running one of the Bucharest football teams, Steaua Bucharest, during this particular period. And there is some suspicion that maybe the referees are applying the odd bit of Fergie time in certain Steaua games where they need the odd goal in order to win football matches. So, I mean, this is a very good football team, and we should never move away from that. With very good players, with great coaches, and what they achieve in Europe is brilliant. And we're not getting to the rating right now because there's so much more still to cover. But we definitely need to add in the element that there was influencing factors potentially that were allowing the Steaua team to get the best out of the referees during this particular period.
You also can't get away. They win the European Cup in 86. They get to the semi-final again in 88, is it? And they get to the final in 89?
They do. They make the semi-finals and they lose to Benfica in the semi-finals. No disgrace, losing to a Western European giant, and Benfica were one of this complete period. But then Benfica go on and they lose to PSV Eindhoven on penalty kicks. in that particular final. Yeah, and then famously they get to the final again, 88, 89. At this particular point, Georgie Hadji is playing. He's in the final. He's an absolute superstar. He's being touted by some of the biggest and best teams in Europe at this particular point. But unfortunately for Steaua Bucharest, they come up against this incredible Arrigo Stacchi's AC Milan team, that of Hullet, Van Basten, and Rijkaard, Maldini. This incredible football team that's pretty much bulldozing everyone they play. And they bulldoze Steaua Bucharest in the final. They beat them 4-0 quite comfortably.
Yes, it's an unfortunate time there for them to play that game. You know, Steaua have done it on an international stage. Now, you know, you say that there was a lot of interest from abroad in Georgie Hadji, but of course, at this point, there's no opportunity for Hadji or any of the other Romanian players to leave and play their football outside of Romania. But of course, what then happens, and this does have an impact on Steaua, although perhaps less so than you might have anticipated, is the revolution, and Ceausescu is gone in December 1980. The revolution comes. This has, amongst something that has many impacts for society, but in terms of football terms, it means that Romania's the players at Steaua, Dinamo Bucharest, can now be transferred to overseas teams and ply their trade abroad. And Georgie Hadji is one of those who is in demand. It's quite understandable. You know, he had a record. His record at Steaua: 97 appearances, 76 goals. It's
I think that's the league as well. I think he put his cup goals and onto that league is even more. It's just for what is an attacking midfielder.
He doesn't even play
very much Maradona kind of style of player.
So yes, Hadji joins Real Madrid and goes on has a highly successful career for several European teams across there. Lactas joins Fiorentino, I think, and ultimately Real Oviedo. You start to see that side that has been built up, that Steaua side is disbanded as players go abroad. Now it is, as I mentioned, Steaua went on the 17-game winning run in 17 wins on the spin in 1988. Dinamo 17 wins on the spin in 1989. So, you know, whether their domination would have continued in Romania is up for debate. I think what's interesting about Steaua as a club is actually you fast forward to 19. They then win 6 more titles. They go on an unbelievable winning run, and I think this is the bit that probably underlines Lactas's legendary status. He comes back in 1993, wins another 5 titles to them. He's won 10 league titles in Romania, a record not surpassed by anyone else. And you see that, you know, perhaps against all odds, that this, despite losing some of these really successful players, and Hadji in particular, actually Steaua do have a level of success, although in European football maybe never quite as successful again.
No, they never repeat it. I mean, the revolution of 89 when Nicolae Ceausescu is executed. Trial was Christmas Eve, executed on Christmas Day. Not a good Christmas Day yet for the Ceausescu family. It really does start the chain of events. You're right, the players do go. Lactas goes in 1990. Allen goes in 1990. Hadji, you mentioned. Petrusa, he also goes. Quite a number of Somalis are pretty good. So you're going to miss that if you're not able to get that anywhere else in the world. So you want to come back for those lovely boiled cabbage delights. But yeah, I mean, Romanian football is never going to experience the likes of what they've experienced previously. They do have a little bit of a glimmer of the past times.
No, where they make glint was.
Yeah, glimmer. Yeah, I know, right? That's an interesting word. I don't even know what that means. Somewhere between a gimp and a limp.
Yeah, I was
They do
thinking
have a
glimpse and
glimmer
glimmer.
of, they experience a small teaser of their past glories when they get to the semi-finals of the UEFA Cup in 2005, 2006, where they face Gareth Southgate's Middlesbrough. Here we are back with, could have been Bolton Wanderers, could have been
Yes.
Bolton Wanderers. So they made the semi-finals there, but they lose out. Middlesbrough go on to the final, where, as we've worked out, in all UEFA Cup tournaments, they lose to Seville, as teams always did. So that's the end of it. I mean, after that, they do qualify regularly for European competitions, but they very rarely get to the latter stages of these tournaments after their little foray in the UEFA Cup in 2005, 2006. To the point now where even if they qualify, because the Romanian league has become such a devalued league in terms of the playing staff, will just go off to find riches in Italy and Spain and Portugal and England and France. Even in the lower leagues, they can earn more money in those leagues than they can in the Romanian league. You know, the Romanian champions, when they do qualify for the European Cup, they go in at the first qualifying round stage. They go in at the same stage as Tele-Network Solutions, who we covered here previously. That's where Romanian football has unfortunately dropped to. From those dizzy heights of Steaua Bucharest being European Cup champions.
No, I think there is another legacy of that Steaua team, and I think that comes from what then happens to Romania's national team, which then goes on over 3 successive World Cups. I think Romania at this stage are the everyone's ultimate dark horses for a tournament. There's this, you can imagine everyone tipping them as dark horses for it. I think what's interesting about this, and I think this is the Hagi effect, amongst other things, is that I think people remember the Romania side, more lovingly, and with more entertainment and more kind of view of them being quite a fun side than Steaua, which I think because of whether that is the kind of old school view of Eastern Europe or whether that is winning a European tournament by keeping a shutout in normal time and in the penalty shootout. The Romania teams that play in those World Cups are very fondly remembered.
Yeah, I think there's a number of things that happens. Obviously, you've got the revolution that kind of takes place in '89, and that changes the whole landscape of what Romania is. But there's a few other things that happens that probably dilutes and makes us forget about Steaua Bucharest. You've got the Champions League starts changing what it becomes. So from 1992, 91, 92, you have this league system, and then as you go through, you get more teams from Western European leagues in England, Italy, Germany, and Spain qualifying for the Champions League, which increases the quality there and dilutes the possibility for teams like Romanian teams to do well. But you've also got the Bosman ruling that comes into play as well. And the Bosman ruling has a knock-on effect for Romanian league football, but has a positive effect for Romanian football players that can go and ply their trade elsewhere. And I think with the World Cup, you've got this global audience, and you've got Romania at the '94 World Cup in particular, where they do absolutely shine a line of beautiful football. They have that incredible result against Argentina, which takes them to the quarterfinals of the World Cup, where they lose to Sweden. But yeah, you've got Georgie Hagi. I mean, Georgie Hagi was the Lionel Messi, was the Cristiano Ronaldo of his day. I remember absolutely loving Georgie Hagi and Stoichkov for Bulgaria. These are the two players I wanted to see play all the time. They were just wonderful, wonderful footballers. Georgie Hagi is one of my favorite footballers I think I've seen in my lifetime. He was absolutely what I want all footballers to be. He was just joyful, and he had genius that was just so unpredictable.
Hagi, who in some quarters was known as the Maradona of the Carpathians, which I'd forgotten about that, because if I thought about it, I'd been able to use up a headline I've wanted to use for many times, which of course is keeping up with the Carpathians. But, I've never had an opportunity to get that in there. And this is funny. I should have done it at the top of the thing. Maybe I'll re-record it. It's a bit tenuous, isn't it? What I like about, I absolutely love that team, and the '94 team, and we'll do we all cover that at World Cup, which is the one in the US, which is fantastic for many, many levels. Of course, that's the tournament. They get knocked out by Republic of Ireland, don't they? It's the Peggy Bonner penalty save, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. David O'Leary, I think, was the winner.
Yeah.
And in that particular game. Yeah, I mean, that's the wonderful Republic of Ireland team. But Romania qualified from the group at that particular moment, which is their first World Cup they played it. So it's, I think, 1970. Yes, and they went to 1970. So they qualified out of the group and into what was called the round of 16, where they faced the Republic of Ireland and then went out on penalty shootout.
What I like about, I always like my our stories to be have nice, easy beginnings and end points. And this one is great because there is clearly, you're struggling to see, when did that era end? When did that era of Romanian greatness, which can be tracked back to the original Steaua Bucharest, when did that end? Well, is there a moment? Well, clearly there is a moment, because it's at the World Cup in 1998 when, after winning 2 games, the Romanian side all dye their hair blonde. It's an absolutely glorious moment, and it is seen in some quarters as the point, this show of complacency, arrogance. They all did it. It seems a convoluted and bizarre reason why I still don't really get to the bottom of it. But what I love about it, which hadn't really occurred to me, there's a great there's an interview with one of the commentators at the time who said, this was obviously an absolute nightmare because you used to suddenly have every player on the field who's got blonde hair. It's absolutely surreal now, especially for the overseas commentators. Now, I was reading about this, and this is definitely Michel Platini, no less than anyone else, had warned future Romanian sides not to copy the 98 squad if they ever want to be successful again. They all bleached their hair blonde. I think it was done in quite an amateur fashion, so I think some of them it really suffered from. Some of the players talking about it in retrospect, and they said the person they really felt sorry for was the guy who had the longest hair at the time, and of course, who should that be? But it's our man, Marius Lakatas, there in 19, rinsing his hair blonde just as he was there taking that glorious penalty against Barcelona that underlines Stoia's name in the history books. So I like that.
Many of us were dyeing our hair blonde at that particular period, Graham. It was the perfect thing to do. Not all of us were confusing Barry Davis. Some of us were just doing it because we wanted to look cool.
I said at the top of this, the podcast, that there's an additional wrinkle to this as to actually who Steaua Bucharest are. There's this brilliant legacy. There's a great legacy, a great achievement. This side that's the only Romanian side to have won the European Cup, Champions League, an incredible achievement, incredible players. So I think it's in the late 90s, they said the army or the government essentially decided to privatise Steaua Bucharest. There's no other way of looking at it. So they seek private.
Why don't all countries privatise their army? I mean, that would just make the world a much more interesting place. Can you imagine?
Yeah, they choose to privatise the football club rather than the army, but the army would have been a better option. They find private investors. It doesn't go particularly well initially, but in 2003 they're bought by a gentleman called Mr. Bakali, who is a slightly controversial figure within Romania. Until 2017, he believes he has bought Steaua Bucharest and everything that is Steaua Bucharest. This is disputed. There is a court ruling which declares that in that 2003 sale, they hadn't, in fact, bought Steaua Bucharest. I don't know what. I mean, it's just the most extraordinary thing. So they are ordered at that point to change their name to FCSB, and they continue to play in Romania's top tier. But a new team, Steaua Bucharest, a new version of them begins, and like we've seen it, all across football, as we've seen in England with the likes of MK Dons and even the real Man United, I think you would call them, clubs that have started in the lower tiers and made their way up through the ranks. So I think the battle is still going on. George Bacali is still sort of fighting it. As far as things stand, they remain without the courts are still, I think, holding it with the new Steaua Bucharest, who are now they've had a few promotions. They seem to be a little bit stalled, but they are now just one league below. Yes, FCSB. There's a clue in there.
FCSB, yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
It's one of your high street banks, isn't it?
So it's just
the answer is yes, FCSB.
It's an incredible development that you have, potentially greatest history in Romanian football history, and they can't even agree which club it belongs to.
I mean, it's tragic for the fans that they're now having to live through this. Not only have they seen the demise of the Romanian Football League and any hope of doing well in European football taken from them, they now have this split loyalty between the original Steaua Bucharest and now this Hard Street Bank version, FCSB. And kind of, I liked how you said Gigi Bacali was a slightly controversial character. I think that was incredibly considered,
generous,
to be honest, and very generous. I think we haven't covered Silvio Bernastoli, but he would definitely be in that bracket. But we have covered the incredible guy from Marseille, Bernard Tapie. And I think these are similar-ish characters in terms of how they conduct themselves in the world of football, politics, financing, anything else they can get their hands on. And I think Bacali is potentially of that same makeup. But I don't know. All I can do is base it off what I can read on a Wikipedia page.
Yes, certainly. I think during the pandemic, his views on vaccinations added to some of his. I was going to say left field. I don't think left field is the right term for it.
Football related is good, actually. I would just like to say that he probably makes Donald Trump look like a perfectly reasonable individual.
But in amongst it sort of makes sense. So you look at two of the heroes of that original side. So Balland, who scores the winning penalty for Steaua in the 86 final. He appears, from what I can see, to be on favour that the new Steaua, or the true spiritual home to it, whilst
the army Steaua. They're the new one, but they're the army one, which is the old one.
This is exactly right. And our man Helmuth Duckadam is apparently backing and siding with FSSB or FCSB. So even the players can't decide where it is, but it doesn't take away. Well, it does take away, but it's absolutely fascinating. Right, that's enough nonsense. We need to start and thinking about judging and ranking them. As a reminder, 5 categories of greatness, from all-time greats at the top down to true greats. Right in the middle, we have touch of greatness, followed by edge of greatness, and blink of greats right at the bottom. I'll go through them quickly now. I'm in the second year of doing it. Jamie, where do you want to go with this team?
I mean, there's lots of good things with this football team. They play in an era where the European Cup is the European Cup for the champions of the league, and they achieve something that is an absolute piece of history. They're the first Eastern European football team to win the European Cup. It's only been done twice. Red Star Belgrade were able to repeat that feat, and we missed out on something, actually. One of the players that played in the final, Beladici, played for both teams. So he played in the final for Steaua Bucharest, where they won, and he also played for Red Star Belgrade. So a little bit of history there. A player that's played for both teams that have ever won the European Cup from an Eastern European country. They go on this incredible unbeaten run, 104 games. They win 3 doubles in that period. They do get to the latter stages of the European Cup on a number of occasions as well, losing out to a brilliant AC Milan team. They're also one of the first Romanian football teams, one of the first Eastern European football teams to engage with sponsorship. So around about the time where manager Emmerich Yene was involved, Ford, the motor company, were an official sponsor partner for Steaua Bucharest. So they were first in that as well. So There's suspicion in terms of where they probably were supported with referees. There's links to the Romanian Communist Party that are leading the country in terms of who is running the club. But I'm going to kick us off, and I generally feel this is fair to be debated. I think Steaua Bucharest, 1985 to 1989, with all of their wonderful triumphs, is our second tier. They are true greats.
Well, I too was thinking second tier, but I was thinking second tier from the bottom. Listen, I mean, yes, winning 104 games in a row, or going undefeated for 3.5 years, 104 games undefeated, 17 wins in a row amongst that. That is quite cheap. But they've only got to be better than one other team. They only had to be better than Dynamo Bucharest. It's a total duopoly. I mean, we're talking about a team when when the crunch comes, penalty shootout, they can only score two themselves. They don't win it in style. They don't score. They're not. There's this one moment we talked about. Some of the advantages they had. Where the thing that is tipping me to move them up the ladder a little bit from that second tier is it's the point that I'd been totally lost to me until you mentioned it. Is that final is played in Seville. It's played in Seville, and that's like virtually no one from Romania watching. To hold their nerve for that achievement, and actually, when you think about what they achieve on a international scale, it is quite impressive. I don't think it is. I think they are. They break the mold. But would you? I know we put too many teams in this category, but if I bust them down to touch of greatness, would you be offended?
Well, we have a relegation promotion party coming up, so it could just be another one added to my big list.
It's going to be a rant from you. I think there we go. Steaua Bucharest, European Cup winners in 1986, are touch of greatness.
One other thing, with the rivalry between Steaua and Dynamo, from 1985-1986 season through to the 89-90 season, the 6 cup finals were contested between both those teams. Steaua Bucharest won 4 of them. Dynamo won the other 2. Dynamo won in 1990 6-4. 10 goals in the final. I mean, that's great, isn't it?
You normally
I can only wonder that maybe.
Well, I mean, if you remember, there was that one glorious year where Arsenal played Sheffield Wednesday in virtually every domestic cup final. I don't think there was a single goal in any of them, and the winner came in off Andy Linegan's nose. So that you have to relish.
One of those finals as well. I don't know if you remember. Was I think Steve Morrill scored the winning goal.
Course,
I think it was the League Cup final. Right?
Yes.
I mean, asked him later in tongue in cheek, I guess. And whilst he was celebrating on the shoulders, I think, of Tony Adams, he fell off and broke his arm.
Quite impressive, isn't it? That's probably what he's most famous for. Even more famous for than scoring the goal.
How many players get injured on the field of play after the football match is finished? I mean, it doesn't happen very often.
It is quite impressive, isn't it? Thank you for your time as ever, Jamie.
You're very welcome. That was fun. And talking Eastern European football, our specialist subjects. If we were on Mastermind, that would be the subject of choice, I'm sure, for both of us.
It certainly wouldn't be pronouncing players' names from that part of the world. All players' names, full stop. As a reminder, you can check out all our slightly obscure rankings and team sheets from some of these prize teams, and check out all the teams that we've covered on the podcast for at our website. If you have enjoyed the podcast, please like us, subscribe to us, and tell your friends. We have coming up over the next few weeks, we're going to be doing Martin O'Neill's Celtic. We're going to be doing the fantastic Billy Bingham's Northern Ireland, amongst others.
Well, Graham, we shouldn't forget as well that FA Cup final special, Coventry City, where we're going to try and fail, no doubt, to recreate the classic 1980s television build-up to the FA Cup final.
Very much so. And for that team, we chose to focus on Coventry. Coventry City, we decided, were the most 80s cup final side. And We decided this many weeks ago, and we came within a minute and a fraction, a toe of being unbelievably apt in our choice and looking like we were just getting on the bandwagon. We had decided this weeks ago, but there you go. So we got all those coming up over the weeks to come, and we will speak again soon.